let's move on to a Softdial repository. So this is once again a dialer configuration database. It's where dialer stores in its configuration and then picks it up. On a tenant, it looks slightly different to what we were seeing on a landlord level. So on the landlord level, you can remember we had media types, dialing cycle outcomes, agent outcomes, but it was a template. Now we have actual tenant configuration, and we had inbound routes. So some of them are duplicated but used in a slightly different way. So let's start with campaign and queues. Outbound campaigns do not require queues. On outbound campaigns, agents directly log into outbound campaign and work on that campaign. Only when it comes to inbound campaigns, then it is necessary for existing campaign, let's say inbound, then we can create multiple queues for this campaign. And we can have different operations on that inbound campaign. So let's say one of my queues is going to be support, for example. So it is important to, once again, this media type. I'm highlighting importance of this because inbound campaigns in our system are used to handle different media types like chat, email, voice, and so on. So you need to get it right. If you are setting up voice telephony campaign, inbound campaign, you should be using relevant type. If you are setting up chat campaign and queue, you should be using this thing here. Yeah, and so on and so on. Another field is description. So this is quite straightforward. Timers. So they are used the same on different types of sessions. The main is overflow time. So when the call, inbound call or inbound session reaches the queue, then, and let's say we don't have any agents available to handle that session, the session will be queuing. The timeout is reached, and then we can overflow to another queue. So this setting here tells the dialer if no one is answering the session on the queue for 60 seconds, then if this field is blank, like it is in here, the call will be dropped, or if populated, it is possible to overflow to another queue. Then we have offer timeout, and this makes sense only on those PBX style campaigns, queues, so inbound on hook. What it tells us, call will be offered to an agent or to a group of agents, spending every 15 seconds on dialing particular agent's extension. And if that agent doesn't pick up, we start offering to another agent, and so on until the overflow time is reached. So at the moment, with those default settings, you can see that within 60 seconds we can offer to 4 agents. If none of them pick up the phone, the call will be either dropped, or if there is overflow address, the call will be overflowed to another queue. I will get back to those settings in a second. So let's just go to another window. So there are 2 types of agents. It can be robot agent, so IVR agent, or it can be live agent. So with the option that I highlighted on the screen, you can simply assign number of IVR robot agents to work on that particular queue serving those inbound sessions. Then we can control behavior of the session within the queue. So while call is queuing, once again, when no one replies for 60 seconds, we can overflow the session to another queue. Queues can be put into service or out of service. So if the queue is out of service, then we may have alternative overflow. Yeah, we can specify overflow to like out of hours queue, like IVR queue that is processing requests when customers dial outside of working hours. Queue selection mode, so this also makes sense on hook campaign, so PBX style campaign. because then it's visible how calls are being offered to agents. So we have ordered where every agent is assigned a priority, and then according to the priority, always the queue will try to offer the call first to the agent with the highest priority, and only then to agents with the lowest priorities. Round robin, this is quite straightforward, so offer to one agent, then if this agent doesn't pick up, offer to another one, then the third one, fourth one, and get back to the first one, and so on and so on. So round robin. Longest idle, so offer to the agent who's been idle the most time, so who's been waiting the most time without a call being offered. Blend fairness, maybe firstly about what blending is. Blending is when agent works on a one campaign at a time, but can be moved between multiple campaigns. So in a real scenario, you are going to have one outbound campaign and multiple inbound queues. So at the moment I will review this functionality, okay, with two queues. And let's say we have some telephony network. I'm just simplifying in here because we have a couple of more services in between. But just to simplify what I wanted to show you, we have customers, customer 1, customer 2, customer 3, and so on. And now we have agent logging into the system. So let's mark it as green. We are creating that agent object in here. So this is our agent. And agent is working on outbound campaign. And this campaign, as it's outbound, it is generating outbound calls to customers and connecting the agent with the outbound customers. But in the meantime, there might be some customers initiating inbound calls, and then they are routed to particular queues. Yeah, and this guy here is routed to this queue here. You either decide to have additional agents logged in here to those campaigns to process those inbound calls, or what you can do instead, you can have one agent log into outbound campaign, but also working being member of inbound queues. And now when agent is done with the outbound call, yeah, so this session is disconnected, agent will be moved by the dialer automatically to inbound campaign to process this inbound session. So as you can see, it's not multi-session because agent at one time, agent can be only on one session, either inbound or outbound. Agent can be talking either to inbound customer or outbound customer or inbound customer from the other queue. Yeah, not multiple sessions at a time. An agent is blended, so moved between campaigns. And once, for example, this session has been disconnected as well, we don't have this session anymore, dialer sees that another customer session is waiting in that queue, so dialer once again will move that agent to another queue to process another call. Okay, I'm working on outbound and suddenly dialer needs to take me out. So what dialer does, dialer firstly wants to be on a safe side and compliant, so dialer will never disconnect your call. What dialer can do and what it does, it reserves you. It firstly makes reservation for agent, for the best suited agent. But if any agent at any point becomes available at that time, then dialer switches reservation, and then when it's safe to remove agent from predictive campaign, the dialer does so and moves agent to the inbound. So you are not risking any abandon calls caused by this blending because dialer controls the behavior and situation, and it makes reservations rather than just taking agents from here and there and to move them to the inbound. But there are some options where you can control that behavior a little bit more. So you can configure the dialer to take into account other conditions. For example, one of the options is blend fairness. So if it's none, it's just default normal behavior of the dialer, just being careful on predictive campaign, but at the same time trying to meet SLA levels on inbound queues. But when it's set to last offer, this setting is used typically for collections. Yeah, so the blend algorithm moves agents from outbound to inbound campaigns in order to meet demand. And if there is consistent inbound demand, the agents that are blended in will stay on inbound. The default behavior is that after processing inbound session, the agent will be moved back to the outbound campaign. But if this option is selected to last offer, it means blended agents will stay on inbound campaign. And why it's used in collections? Because in collections operations, the agents would like to be rotated to inbound because, for example, most people calling in will pay money. So therefore, agents will get more commission from accepting and processing calls on inbound campaign. So blend fairness enables this rotation and enables agents to stay on inbound campaign. Okay, another setting which is called allow immediate blend transfer. So we have two options which we can control blending behavior with, and this allow immediate blend transfer means that instead of negotiating agent release from outbound campaign, the inbound queue will grab outbound agents that are not on calls. At the same time, this option is quite dangerous when dialing under some regulations and compliance-aware countries, because this may cause more abandoned calls, so you will need to be careful. If this option is selected, you are prioritizing inbound calls and inbound sessions, so you can expect a little bit better SLAs. The simplest scenario: agent is working on outbound campaign and wants to go for a break. Let's say a cigarette break. So agent will press the button requesting an availability, but nothing happens. Agent will get another call from the dialer because dialer already took that agent into account within the simulation and predictions, and dialer can't just lose that agent because dialer was making calls according to the number of agents it has, and suddenly imagine all the agents disappeared from the system because they requested break, and there were some calls in progress, and those calls will be connected. All of them will have to be abandoned. So dialer controls the agent availability. It may take a couple of calls sometimes until the agent is released. So also when working on outbound campaign, you will have to instruct your agents that they have to be patient and they have to leave the system properly. That's why in general, dialer will be balancing and will be requesting an availability, will be negotiating agent release. And if you tick this box in here, that means that dialer won't be doing that much. It will just be grabbing agents that are actually currently waiting and moving them to process inbound calls. Okay, the next thing, queue priority, and queue priority works together with those two SLA settings. And what it is, so there might be multiple inbound queues under the same campaign, and now those queues might have different priorities. Let's say that you have two queues. The one is VIP, the other one is normal service. So you have one campaign. Under this campaign there are two queues, and let's say for simplicity, you have only one agent working on both of these queues. So there will be some customers with the normal service and there will be some VIPs that pay you some fee. Yeah, so you want to service their calls first. So those two queues will have different priorities, and the queue with the higher priority, since there is one agent working on those two queues, dialer will have to decide how to use that agent on which queue and connect to which session from which queue to meet the SLA, so service level agreement. So this will be for VIPs a little bit higher, and then it will be lower for normal service. And then you can also control SLA percentage. So after what percent of calls not answered within that many seconds, the queue will be deemed out of SLA. And then the dialer has an algorithm, and this is what's going to happen. So firstly, dialer orders the queues based on priority, but it also takes into account SLA. So if both of the queues are outside of the SLA target, then those queues will be ordered by priority, and where queues of equal priorities, then SLA performance applies. But basically, if both of the queues are outside of SLA, they will be ordered by priority, and the queue with the higher priority will be served by the agent first. And now overflow on group busy. So that's another option. If we have new incoming session, inbound session, whether voice or chat, we have some agents working on that queue, but all of the agents are busy, so are on the calls at the moment. Then when this option is selected, it will trigger the call to be overflowed immediately to another queue that we can specify in overflow address. Another option, so when we have another scenario where our queue is empty, so no agents whatsoever, and there is an incoming call reaching that queue, so we can decide whether we want to drop the call or keep that call queued until any of the agents will arrive to the queue. So the call can be either dropped, or when it's ticked, we can be queuing the call. This option only controls the behavior of the queue where the queue is empty and there is incoming call session. And now you can, with this option, you can decide what should happen. When queue is empty and there is a new incoming call session, do you want to drop the call, or do you want the call to be queued anyway? Unchecked, the call will be dropped. When it's ticked, you will be queuing. As a customer, you will hear a ringtone, and you will be waiting for any agent to become available, to log into the dialer and become available on that queue. Force connect, this should be enabled by default, otherwise it causes some issues with telephony. Okay, in-queue messaging, so I'm pretty sure you know what this is all about. You most likely you dialed some services, customer services, or customer support, or something like that, and then you usually have in a queue, when you reach the queue, when you dial in, you have some greeting, yes, some message entry that is played, like welcome to the queue, or this is this company, and we will try to handle your call as soon as possible, answer your call as soon as possible. Then you can customize it, and for example, if you have some agents but all of them are busy, you can play a customized message, or you can also play on hold music. So this is quite also straightforward. While customer is queuing, is waiting in a queue for an agent, play some relaxing music, or you can play a kind of reminder. So this setting works together with this timing here. So if you say, for example, that this is set to 10, every 10 seconds play this file. In here, actually also worth mentioning, in here you can use either pre-recorded audio files or TTS, or it works only in English at the moment, and you can play like queue position and average wait for the session. So when customer can expect his or her call to be answered, average wait time in the queue and queue position. But yeah, once again, at the moment it's not really localized. It's not translated, localized to Russian language. But anyway, you can use TTS messages or just audio files. An application routing, we don't have to talk about this. This applies to someone who has their own integration. So I haven't yet talked about this setting here. sorry, we talked about robot agents, but we haven't talked about allocation of the live agents. So I will get back here once we actually have some agent or endpoint configured. And now moving forward, so users and endpoints. How the users of the system are represented. Firstly, when I logged in here, so let me log out. So when I logged in to the web client, to the default tenant, I used this administrator, and this is my user. So whatever I will be configuring now in repository, so this is called user. This is something I use to log in to the web client and work with the applications. And now getting back to repository and this configuration in here. Okay, so administrator is my my user. If I wanted to create a new user, so let's say this time I will call it Andrew. I can assign a password, so the password I will be able to use to log into the web client with. Now, default telephony address, you don't really have to specify that, but if you decide to use that, it will be an agent's extension. Agent as an extension can use different things. It can be a web phone, it can be a soft phone, it can be desk phone, or even mobile number. So this should be the way we will be communicating with agent, through whatever agent is using as an extension. Then authenticate using operating system. I think this setting here, we can ignore that temporarily. What's important, so account locked, you can remember those tenant settings. You could specify how many unsuccessful attempts, login attempts, before we decide to lock out the agent. So once that happens, if we have that configuration in place and the user has been logged out of the system, this tick box will be checked. And then it's only matter for administrator coming here and unchecking this tick box. And we've developed our own web phone, so it is possible to use as an agent extension to use a phone in a browser. And permissions, so this is how we control visibility of those items on the home page. Yeah, so what applications the user has an access to and what applications should be visible to that particular user. At the moment, I will make myself a super user to make it more convenient. I don't want to switch between the users later on. And that's it. That's users configuration. So now I have one user, and within the user, as it was with the queues, I can configure multiple endpoints in this panel here. And now what endpoints are? Endpoints are something used to control the session. So this is actually what supports multimedia in our architecture. So let's say that I wanted my user, Andrew, I want this guy to handle voice sessions, for example, on inbound campaign, and then I will have some extension. And also I want this guy to process chat sessions. At the moment I don't really have chat campaign. I'll create one later. So I have two endpoints, and now those endpoints will be used later on when we log in to the agent desktop. So at the moment they don't really make too much sense. They may not make too much sense to you, but they are configured as something that we will be able to handle multiple sessions at a time with. But anyway, so this configuration will start making more sense when we start using Agent Desktop as an agent. Agent outcomes. So this is quite straightforward. So we already discussed this. You can customize it, and then this customization will be used for the tenant in here. So any changes you actually make in here, they will be applied to the whole operations on this tenant. So you can use those valid agent outcomes that your customer can use on this tenant. Break reasons, so that's something that agents will be using to request unavailability from the dialer. So after they click the button, it may take another couple of calls being connected to the agent, and then agent will be released and one of these will be assigned, and it's later used for reporting. So if you want to have a report on when agents were taking breaks and why, what was the most common reason, you can do it with those settings and reporter. Sounds, so you can upload WAV files. Of course, they need to be in correct format, and so correct codec and correct properties. Those files from here, once uploaded, you will be using only these names in here. And where you can use it, in a queue configuration, for example, or it will come really handy when it comes to scripter. Also, you remember when were we in Campaign Manager, for example, while configuring campaign, we could use a setting called abandon message. So once you uploaded your customized abandon message, you can then simply use this name to refer to the file. And they are stored on the web server. Yeah, so once you uploaded it, the content goes to the web server, and then you can reference the files through using the name of the file. Static configuration, we won't waste too much time because you will need to know about APIs. This is a little bit more sophisticated functionality. You can send basically some messages when the dialer starts. So open some campaigns, log in some agents, etc. Inbound routes. So this is used once again for email and voice and chat routing. So all inbound sessions. And now you can remember landlord settings. They had the same settings here, but the only difference was this destination was a tenant. And now when the call based on CLI and DNIS, so based on where the call or any other session type originates from and goes to, we can push the call to the tenant, and in here we can distribute the calls between queues, or we can push it back to the STG when it comes to voice sessions, so we can send it back to telephony, and we can record the call when call is being sent out. Now we'll go to the last functionality of the Softdial repository, which is groups and groups of groups functionality. So let's say what you can do with groups. You can create containers and you can organize the different types of the users here. So as an example, let's say we have an office. So I'm introducing some structure. Yeah, I have the office, and within the office I have reception, yeah, where the calls are distributed. I also have some sales department, some support department, and so on and so on. And now those three groups, I can organize them under the office. So I created kind of structure of my company. And now if I add some endpoint, so the sessions, to one of the subgroups, they will automatically become available as a members of the group, the main group. Yeah, so if I added endpoint to the sales group, this endpoint is a member automatically of the office group. You can use that for different languages, different types of languages, etc., where you have some more sophisticated structure and you don't really want to always drag and drop endpoints to the one group. And now, so you have groups and you organized something, yeah, your endpoints within the groups, and now you can get back to the queue configuration and you can either drag and drop, you can use the endpoint itself, or already my endpoint is a member of sales group, so I can either add this will add my endpoint to the group, or I can simply do this. Yeah, I'm adding the whole office and all the endpoints that are members of all other groups will become members of this queue.